First month of 2019 is almost finished, which means it's just about time to talk about the December release of 2018 of Resco Cloud version 11.3. My name is Juraj Mojik, I'm a product manager here at Resco, and I will walk you through the new features of our winter release for 2018. Before I start, I would like to give you some information about how this is going to happen. So this is a webinar, and this means that you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. So you are all muted. If you have any questions, feel free to write them into the GoToWebinar window, and I will answer them at the end of our webinar session. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available on YouTube shortly afterwards. So let's get started. Resco Cloud version 11.3 was released in December 11th, 2018 and contains a lot of new features and functionalities in different areas of our mobile solution. Today I will talk about a couple of them. First of all, Woodford HTML, a very important announcement and information. Then I will show you our new sync dashboard and how can you utilize this to get more out of your support teams. I will also talk about how to add custom fonts into the mobile application, introduce you to the box file service integration that we have built, and finally walk you through some improvements in our JavaScript Bridge. This will take all together around 1 hour, so we'll see how many questions there are and how long it will take me to walk you through all the features and show you demos of almost all of the things I've mentioned. So Woodford HTML. As you probably know, we have Woodford customization tool, which up until this point looks something like this. It was a Silverlight application, meaning that this was using an outdated Microsoft technology called Silverlight, and you had to install Silverlight to be able to use Resco Woodford. Because Silverlight is outdated and not updated by Microsoft anymore, we had to move to a newer version of the technology, and we decided to rewrite the whole Woodford into HTML. Now, if you have been working with Resco already, you have probably received an email which looks something like this around December 4th. Which said that Silverlight version of Woodford will be discontinued and you should start using the HTML-based Woodford. So let me give you a little bit more information about this very important announcement. From January 2019, we recommend to use Woodford HTML as your main tool for all the customizations. The Silverlight version will still exist and will receive bug fixes until 2020. After that, we will no longer support the Silverlight version, so you have a whole year to do the transition. But I urge you to try Woodford HTML and start using Woodford HTML as soon as you can. And the main reason is that all the new features that we are going to add and all the new features that you will see in this webinar are actually only configurable via Woodford HTML. That means that with Silverlight version, you will not find some of the configuration options for the new features which we will introduce throughout 2019, only in Woodford HTML. So definitely you should start using Woodford HTML as soon as you can. So I would say you should start using Woodford HTML for all the new customers and all the new projects that you will create. If you have some existing projects and would like to use Woodford HTML with those, I recommend backing them up, meaning you will export them or create clone of the project, because when you open the project with Woodford HTML, it will automatically perform upgrade. It will ask you if you want to do it, but it will perform an upgrade to a new format. Which means that when you perform the upgrade, so install Woodford HTML, use Woodford HTML and open a project, it will change the format of the project. And I will explain what that means in a moment. Woodford HTML looks pretty much similar to Woodford Silverlight. the workflow, how you work with Woodford, is basically the same. If you have tried it, you have probably noticed that it is significantly faster in some areas, but definitely faster. It also allows collaboration of multiple users on one project. I will give you more details on that. And it's also available for not only Windows, because Silverlight was mostly used on Windows platform, but now you can use Woodford since it's HTML and JavaScript. You can use it on Mac or Linux or even iPad. So you can work anywhere, make configurations, customizations to your Resco projects almost from any place. If you go to Dynamics, you can find it in the settings section and into Woodford. You will see that now the old Silverlight Woodford is legacy, and the HTML5 Woodford is the main tool to be used. It's also available directly in the Resco Cloud if you click on Design Projects or Actual Project. And in Salesforce, we will have the Woodford HTML available in February 2019, so basically in a week or two. What's new in Woodford HTML? Because as we were writing Woodford into HTML, we've decided to do a couple of improvements. One of them is the new project format. Another one is the new report editor, so you can create mobile reports for Resco mobile application much faster and easier. The rules editor is basically the same, but it looks a little bit different because it has been rewritten into HTML and JavaScript. We have the collaboration, and we've improved the user experience. So the project format, what does it mean? In Woodford Silverlight, we had format 1, which means that the whole project which you have created was stored in your CRM server as one file, one big zip file, and everything was in this one file. This was all right, but it had certain implications. With Woodford HTML, we have created new format number 2, and you can see it in both Woodfords and Silverlight and in the HTML here as one of the columns in the mobile projects. And this new format stores every file of the project as individual record. That means that if you have a view or a form, it will be stored as an individual file, individual record on your CRM system. And this might not look like much, but it means that multiple users can work on the same project at the same time, because they will be rewriting different files, different records on the system. They will not be writing into one file, one project, one big zip file. And that's the big change that we gained with changing the format. If there is a new format, you might be asking, okay, but if I use Woodford Silverlight, what this means to the formats and what it means to with Woodford HTML. So if you use Woodford Silverlight, it will only create format number 1. Every new project you create with Woodford Silverlight, it will be format 1. It cannot create format 2. But it can open both of them. It can publish both of them. Woodford HTML only creates format number 2, so you cannot really create the old format with Woodford HTML. Works with both of them, but it will mandatory upgrade your project. So if you will open old project format number 1, it will ask you to upgrade. If you will not, it will not open that project. So it can really work only with the version number 2 and publish version number 2. As we were rewriting Woodford, we had to rewrite every part of the Woodford tool, and one of the big ones was the report editor. So basically the feature where you can create mobile documents directly on the mobile device, even if there is no connectivity. And how the document will look like, you define in the report editor. We have improved the user experience of the report editor at least a little bit, because with the old one it has been cumbersome in some situations. And what also has happened is that now the report editor is separated from Woodford. So it's not really part of the whole Woodford tool, but it's a separate, basically web application. This allows you to provide the ability to create reports to not only the administrators, but also to other users, business users within your organization, which do not have the administration privileges on your server. So they also could be creating some of the reports and some of the templates for the documents. Again, where you can find them, as I mentioned, they are the report editor is now a separate tool within the mobile CRM tool set. So basically within the mobile CRM settings section in your Dynamics or Resco Cloud. Similarly, we have rewritten the rules. The experience there is very much the same. It's basically just different visualization. Here we haven't really put that much improvements, so it's really just a different way how the rules editor will look like, a slightly different way. I also mentioned that a big improvement is collaboration. Multiple people, multiple administrators can be working on the same project at the same time. The one condition is that they have to be working on different elements, right? They have to be working on different forms, different views, different entities. Obviously, if they would be working on the same form, they would be overriding their changes. But if they are working on different elements, they will not override the changes. And the reason for that is that they are working online. With Woodford Silverlight, the project was downloaded locally, and you were working with a local version of your project. That's not the case with the Woodford HTML. You are working directly with the server version of the project, so you can work together with multiple people on one project. The user experience should be improved. For example, we have bundled the entity UI, and this is one of the experiences or moments where some of the people, when they are trying to adopt Woodford HTML, struggle, because we have now put together all forms, charts, views into one view in Woodford HTML. This is accessible when you click on the little brush icon in Woodford HTML, and then you see all your forms, views, and charts in one big place. Previously, you had to click on forms, on views, or on charts to see them. Now you see them all at once, which gives you a better overview of what kind of UI elements you have defined for an entity. We have now better inheritance visualization. If you are using project hierarchy, if you have parent projects and child projects, you might be interested to know which elements are coming from the parent project, which elements are overridden in the child project. Now with Woodford HTML, we have more places where we give you the status information. So basically, this one is overridden in the child project, so the parent version of the dashboard is not used. So on much more places in Woodford HTML, we give you this information, what is coming from which project. If you have attended our conference, Resco.next in Prague, you probably know that we had a part of the conference where attendees could let us know which features they would like to see in the Resco technology. And some of them were small, some of them were larger. And one of the smaller things which we somehow didn't think was such a big issue was the ability to rename or change localization for an element directly from Woodford when you are creating a form. So we have added this in our winter release right after the conference, and now you are able from the form, for example, rename the name field, how it will look like directly from the form without the need to go into the localization section. Similarly, on the offline HTML, if I'm on a form and I'm adding an iframe, I might have forgotten to add the HTML file into the offline HTML section. Now when I hit the Manage button, it will open up the offline HTML section and I can add my files in there. I don't have to close the form to go into offline HTML section of Woodford and add files there. So really saves a bit of time when working with offline HTML. And we have also added search and filtering options where they weren't previously. Like on the mobile projects, now you can search them, and there are also other places throughout Woodford HTML where there are more search and filtering options. So here I would like to show you my first demonstration and walk you a little bit through the Woodford HTML and some of the new features. So let's switch to Woodford. Here we go. So I have my Woodford HTML loaded up. As you can see, I'm in a browser and I'm working with my mobile projects. So I'll open one of the projects, which is called Woodford. And the first thing I want to show you is that if you are new to Woodford HTML and you would like to work with accounts, open a form for account, what you will do, you will click on the account and you will see the fields, which is what you probably would expect. But in Silverlight Woodford, this would also expand the tree for the views, for the charts, and for the views. And you don't know where this went. So you have to click on this little brush next to the entity name, and this will open the combined view for all the views, forms, and charts. So what I want to do in my demonstration, I want to open this for all the orders. So I click the brush next to orders, and I see form, chart, and view for the order. I will open the form, and the first thing which we can try is renaming one of the fields. So let's say my users are not really, they don't really understand what they have to write into the name. Sometimes they write the customer's name in here. So I want to change that. So I click on Change Localization, which is a new button in Woodford HTML. And this will open up a little window with all the different languages which there are in Woodford, which you have defined for this project and for this organization. And I can directly from here rename and change localization for that field for all the languages. So what I will do, I will change this in English to be order name, and let's be consistent and let's change that for the German localization as well. So I'll click OK. You will not see the name reflected right away, but we'll see that in the application that will happen, and I will see now the order name written in that field. I'll also click on Edit because I want to add Run Mobile Report command in here. And let's save this form because now I want to publish my project. And when I go back to see the list of my projects, I can see that now here, where the mobile reports used to be, there is no mobile report section because it's a separate tool which I have to open. I have my reports in here, and when I open one of the predefined reports which I have imported previously, I will see the new report editor. So let me show you some of the user experience improvements that we have here. So this is a quite fine report. So let me just show you what we can do here. So one of the things I can do, which I couldn't do previously that easily, was to add some constant texts. So before that I had to add a cell, I had to change binding and so on. Here I just click, a new cell is added, I click in there, write constant text or whatever I like, and I immediately can be creating those texts within my report. I can also add rows and columns, which was there previously as well, but it was a little bit problematic to add a column before this one or a row just before this one. And I can do that now. If I click on this little plus, it will let me show you like this. So I'll add a constant text in here, text, and if I click on this plus, it will add one line just above. Similarly, if I click on this plus, it will add one column just before that. This was a little bit tricky with the previous version of Report Editor. You were able to only add the rows and columns at the end and had to then rearrange your cells of the report. I can now very easily just change the row span and col span on all of my cells. And what's also interesting, I can just drag and drop a field on here and have that field present there. I don't have to add a cell. I don't have to change the binding anymore. So it's much quicker to work with the report editor this way. And to really check if my configuration of the localization did work, and maybe we can also check the report, let me synchronize the application. This is the Windows 7 version of the app. So I'll go on the orders, I open one of the orders, and yeah, you can see order name instead of the name on the form. And I also run mobile report. I select the pro forma report, and this is how the document looks like. So I can see all of the fields, all of the documents, all of the products and so on. And I can then print, email, export, or save my document to work with later. So I close this one and get back to presentation because I have some more important features which we have added with the winter release. And they are regarding synchronization. So data is obviously one of the most important things with your mobile application and generally with your IT system. And when your data looks like this, it's probably not good. You don't want something like this. And it might start happening. It might start happening that with the mobile application like Resco, that there is some problem with the synchronization. The data is not correct. There are some synchronization errors, and you don't know what's happening. And with the previous versions of Resco, when this started to happen, your users had to go into the About screen of Resco app, send you the log, and then you can start analyzing what's actually happening in your users' devices. But we wanted to give you tools to be more proactive and find out what's really happening with your users even before they contact you and report a problem with you. So we have introduced synchronization dashboards. Nice charts and lists that give you some information about how your users are behaving in terms of synchronization. So how many of your users do have errors, how long your synchronization takes, how many of your users are performing incremental synchronization, how many of them full synchronization, how many records are being synchronized, what's the average time, what are the errors. This requires this is again a separate tool within the mobile CRM toolset, and this requires the mobile auditing to be enabled because we are utilizing the synchronization logs for this, and we use the automatic sending of those logs to the server. If you have watched our previous webinar about version 11.2, you might have noticed that there is this new feature about where the log from the mobile device can be automatically sent to the server. It doesn't have to be sent by the user manually. And this builds upon this automatic sending of logs, but it has to be enabled. So you have to go into the audit section of the mobile project in Woodford and enable auditing, but more importantly, also enable log synchronization event. If these two are enabled, say then your projects are being applied, your users will start sending you data, which might look something like this. Let me switch to this Woodford. So here I have one organization. Let me very quickly make it a little bit less broad and start with, let it load. So start with I didn't really change the date once again, sorry for that. So let's update. Okay, so this is the current month which I'm looking at. So as you can see, I can filter on some dates, I can filter on some users, but this gives me an overview of this month so far. So I can see we've received 21 logs from different users, and there are no errors for now. Most of them have been full synchronization. I don't think that's very typical. The rest was incremental synchronization. And I can see quite a lot of data being received by my users and not that much sent to the server. I can also see what are the synchronization times, and I can see there were some very long synchronizations, probably some of the full synchronizations, and the rest of the synchronizations were much shorter. This is a very nice list where I can see all of my logs from all of my users, and I can even sort them, so I can see which were the longest synchronizations. I can now see, okay, this was the user, this was the device, and if I click on detail, I can see the log which corresponds to this time, and I can start inspecting what's happening. I can start see, okay, where it took so much time, right? And I can even follow at the very end that the download performance was actually quite good, 1 millisecond per record. So this is the long time is probably just due to really a high amount of records being downloaded. But if there would be errors, I would see them here. I have also different views. So this is just the whole synchronization. I mean, all of the synchronization logs, but I can see this divided by days. So I can see on these days we had more successful synchronizations and so on. We've had some longer synchronizations, but on average it was all right. Here we had probably some full synchronizations happening and also divided by days. And similarly, we have device views. So based on the different devices, I can see again similar statistics or the lists. Now, if I switch back to session view and move back 1 year, so we'll have a lot more records to work with. I should also see some errors happening, right? I can see there are 6 errors which we got here. I can filter this, right? I can just see only the errors if I want to dig deeper into those. We are adding more filtering options as we speak. So with the March release, you will see much more options in here. Anyway, what I want to show you is that I can also sort by the errors, and now I can see the errors. So I can see this user got two problems. One warning that the file was from some reason not accessible, and that was at first the warning, but eventually this resulted in some error. Similarly, I can click on this one and I can see, okay, the user didn't provide the correct URL into mobile CRM. This user had some problem with a privilege, so I know that I should change privileges for this user. And here, for this user, I see a very non-specific error. And if I check the detail of the log and examine where this really happened, I can see that this might be probably something I want to discuss Resco about, because this seems to be some technical issue. So as you can see, this can be very, very useful, especially for proactive support of your users and even figuring out that there are some errors. What will come in March is that you will be able also to act on those errors and resolve them, but we will talk about that in March webinar. So let's continue with another big part of what we are working in Resco at the moment, and that's the UI, because we really want the UI to be nice and to be attractive, and also to be to provide a lot of flexibility for you in terms of what kind of UI experiences you can build. And sometimes users wanted to have more flexibility when it comes to fonts. And currently the Resco mobile application by default is using system fonts or device fonts on that particular device. But now you can add custom fonts. So let's look closer into that. This is how the application could look like. So it can really change the application's appearance quite significantly. We support TrueType fonts, so you can add any type of font which is a TrueType font into Resco Mobile CRM and use it. And they are defined via style. That means that the styles are global, and if you change, for example, the primary style of view or a normal style on the form, this will have effect throughout the whole application where this style is being reused. Or you can target each view or form separately and have a form or view with a specific font where it makes sense. Also, you cannot really change the title bar font as of this moment. Of course, in the future, you will be able to style also the title bar and some other places where the font can be changed at this moment. In Woodford, the setup is basically quite straightforward. You will go into offline HTML and create a folder which is named fonts. It has to have this exact name with the capital F, fonts. Then I'll just upload my fonts. So I have 2 fonts, I put them into that folder, and then I can start using them in my style. So if I go into edit styles, either on form or a view, there is either font name or editor font name and label font name, which you can set for a style. Once you have this set up, you can see your fonts in the application. And I want to show you how you can do that. So I'll go back into Woodford and open the different project, the Woodford one, the default one. And so let's follow the steps. The first thing I have to do is go into offline HTML, create a new folder called fonts. Okay, I'll open that folder and I upload 2 fonts which I have here, like this. Very quick. Now I can save my offline HTML and go into customizing my views and forms. So I click the brush next to accounts. Let's start with the view. So first thing I want to do is define a new style. I can see that the name is using primary style. So I'll find the primary style here. I add one new style out of it with primary font name, and here I have to write the name of the font in my font folder. So it was Bebas was the first one. So I can save my style and I can change the name cell's style to primary font to use my custom font. I also save this one and open the form. Here I follow similar pattern, so I go into edit styles. The form is using normal style for all the fields, so I'll create 2 new styles. First one will be normal Comic Sans for the editor, and I'll go for the editor font name and write comic. And I will add one more. I will add one more style, which will be called normal comic label, and I will write the label font name to be comic, which is the name of my file in the fonts folder. And I'll just set this to some of the fields. So these will have the editor in Comic Sans, and these 2 will have just the label. And if I've set up everything properly, I can just save and close my forms and publish. And let's see if I get my fonts applied in the mobile app. So here again, I have to perform synchronization. My application was updated and I see the name of accounts in my Bebas font. And if I open the form, you can see that the editor and the label have both a custom font applied. It's Comic Sans, which some of you might love and others hate, so I don't judge. It's up to you. Another feature I wanted to talk about is a cloud storage integration. We have integrated multiple cloud storage services into Resco. We have SharePoint integration, Google Drive, OneDrive, and Dropbox. And you can use all those cloud storages with Resco mobile application throughout the app as you would be using Notes, so for storing pictures, signatures, documents, anything else. So you can use media tabs, cloud documents list, images on views with all of those cloud storage services. And now we are adding box.com or box cloud service to be used with Resco as well. The setup is very similar to all other integrations of cloud storages that we have. You just have to go into the Documents section in Woodford and enable Cloud Documents. Once you have done this, you can move to creating root folder. Now this part is very important because without this, the box file integration will not work well, and that's you have to locate the box root folder and use your folder in it. So you will basically create a folder in the root of your box, the cloud storage, where Resco Mobile CRM will start uploading the files. So I have provided test in there, and then I can, for example, put the clouds document list on my form to be able to start adding documents or see documents from Box in my application. Of course, I have to connect with Box as the user, so I have to provide my credentials into the setup screen under the Box, and then I will be able to utilize the Box integration as the user. So this is how it looks like in the application. So in the setup, I have already provided my credentials, so I'm fine with the application. What I have to do is go into Woodford, which is here, and I have to enable documents first. So I'll go here and enable documents, hit save. The second thing I need to do is go into configuration, and I'll use the search here. So I'll write box connect is true, which is fine, and I have already prepared my box root folder test. So I'm almost ready. I'll just go into the accounts. I want to modify the form, and I have now the clouds documents list available here, so I'll just drag that onto the account form and save and close. Publish. And just before I go into the application, I also want to show you here is my box.com file storage. You can see I don't have any files, any folders in there. So the first thing I'll do, I'll synchronize with the new project, which will take a little while. You can see it's synchronizing Box, which is great. And now I can go into accounts, open Apollo apartment building. I have the clouds documents list in here, and I can start adding cloud documents. I also have the Dropbox credentials in my setup, so I can select where I want to put my documents, but I want to use Box. And I can select a file from a list. I will use this one, and let's use maybe this one. Basically, an image of a tree. I'll save and initiate synchronization. It's synchronizing with Box, which is a good sign, which means that I have set it up properly. And once it's finished, I will show you that it has created this new file in the Box file system, but moreover, it has also created the appropriate structure. So I'll just refresh this, and you can see I have my test folder, which is the root folder I've defined in Woodford. And here, when I open it up, it starts creating a file structure for my entities and for my records. So this is the account, this is the account record, Apollo apartment building, and I have my file in here. Similarly, I can just drag a file into Box. It's uploading now. It's in there. It's the PR for our Resco inspections, which were released commercially just this Tuesday. So if you haven't, I really recommend checking this new product out because it's really nice. But we are talking about our 11.3 release, so let's get back to that. And let's synchronize the mobile application again to see my document in the application. So if I go into the accounts, Apollo apartment building, and clouds documents, you can see the inspections PR has been provided, but it exceeds the maximum file size, so I can just download it on demand and I can now open it. And there are other interesting features which I could talk about, like the field level permissions from Dynamic CRM, which we now fully support in the Woodford tool, or non-blocking attachment synchronization, meaning that the attachments will be synchronized in the background, not blocking your users, or the DocuSign reads available signature fields in your PDF, so you can put the signature only where there is the signature box, or the favorites that you can rename on the server side, and that we also support the Azure Blob Storage for Dynamics 365 plugin, which allows you to store your documents on Azure and not in Dynamics CRM. But I want to talk about JavaScript and iframes as the last topic for today. And there have been some new interesting additions in version 11.3. Like on the calendar, you can now long press, which should create a new record, new visit, or new appointment, and you can intercept this with JavaScript and put your own code in there. You can also show a notification window which is non-blocking to the user, or passive, or as we call it, toast. You can start SMS from JavaScript, so you can open the device's SMS application and pre-fill the number for which the SMS should be sent, or even the text on some of the platforms. You can select multiple photos. You can open this dialog from JavaScript, and what we have is as a new thing is promise-based saved and fetch methods, which I will try to explain in a little bit. So for the long press, if you want to handle creating new record on the calendar, it's actually quite simple. You just handle the onCreate handler, you provide your own function in there, and what you will get is inside the context is actually where the user has long pressed. So you even get where the start and where the end of the user's long press has been. This is the toast, so the passive notification window. As you can see, it's just really this small text on top of the Resco application with a nice icon that you can provide and with some text. So really this just pops up in the top or on the bottom, and the user is not blocked in any way. A very simple call from JavaScript. You can initiate sending SMS from JavaScript, which looks something like this. So you provide the number and then you provide the text which you want to pre-fill. It seems that on some of the platforms, it's only supported on some of the platforms, so I urge you to test it before you would like to use it for pre-filling the text for your users. But if you would be using on iOS, there it works really well. So you can see after user selects the number, the text is automatically prepared in the body of the SMS. The JavaScript promises. Before I introduce the promise-based version for save and fetch, let's talk a little bit about promises. I guess some of you might be already familiar with this promise-based JavaScript. Some of you might not be, but to give you a little background on what promises are, they are basically JavaScript's attempt to approach asynchronicity. It's basically now JavaScript standard. The promise and then keywords are part of JavaScript. And for the ECMAScript 6, there is also the async and await keywords, which are basically where we want to get. Currently, not all the browsers support fully ECMAScript 6, but once they will, again, async await can be used, and async await actually builds on top of promises. In future, we want to have all asynchronous JavaScript methods promise-based, or have a promise-based versions of those calls. So what it is? If I have a standard async function like creating an audio file, what I would typically do is I would provide the callback functions like the success callback and failure callback, and I will wait until those are called. With promises, I actually create a promise, and then I can call promise.then, which basically ensures that once this is completed, the success callback or failure callback is called. You will more typically see it written like this. And this might not seem very exciting, I completely understand that, but I'm a big fan of the descriptive development and descriptive code. So looking at this, you might not know what actually happens, right? You really are not sure about what this means and why are you providing the success callback. Whereas this approach is much more descriptive. It tells you that this happens, and then when this is finished, a success or failure callback is called. Now, upon this, a lot can be built. For example, if you have nested calls with nested failure callbacks, you see that this is the standard approach where you have many failure callbacks and not really readable code. Whereas with promises, you can write it like this, which is much more immediate, much more clear what happens. And also you have the catch at very end, which again gives you much better control over what's happening. And there is much more which promises allow you in terms of asynchronicity, and we understand that. That's why we've decided to provide you promise-based versions at least of two main methods. The first of them is fetch. So if you are writing the standard fetch with Resco, and this is the standard example from our JavaScript Bridge reference, it would look like this. So you will get the fetch execute, you will give this the success callback and the error callback. Now with promises, you can now use this approach, right? You can just call execute, then provide your parsing of the results or catch the error. Similarly, for the save method, you have the standard approach, which calls account save, and then you have the success callback. And with async method, you can use then and catch. So again, if you have been writing TypeScript, or if you have been using promise-based or even async await, I think this will be a great update for you. And one more thing I want to say about the JavaScript offline HTML is that we have now started using GitHub as the main source of Resco resources, especially when it comes to JavaScript. So I encourage you to go on these links, github.com/resconet or github.com/resconet.js bridge. And if I again switch to, let me see, here we are, to the link. So this is what you will arrive to. You have, currently we have only JavaScript Bridge. There will be probably more resources, not only JavaScript Bridge related, but if I open it up, you can see that I have some documents, samples, sources, and tools in GitHub, and even some documents describing those. So I can, for example, see source files, and you can see I have the JavaScript Bridge JS file, even TypeScript definition file, and if I click on this one, I can see the JavaScript Bridge, and if I click on history, you will see that I can download the JavaScript Bridge for a corresponding version of Resco, which might be useful if you are working on some older projects which have been stuck with some previous versions of Resco. And that's just one thing which we have here. We have, let's see, we have the samples in here. which my colleagues have been updating in recent days, and even today, as you can see, quite a lot. So they are in the form of the whole project. Let's see what we have here. So you see it's a full project which you can use, or just JavaScript file, or even TypeScript file. So a lot of things are happening already on the GitHub, and we'll be adding more in the future. So if you haven't yet explored this, I encourage you to do so today. But let's get back to the presentation and to the final demo of today to show you just some of the JavaScript additions which we have provided with this release. So I'll again get back to our Woodford, which is this one. I'll use the different project for this one, and I'll go into, let's start with the calendar. So I'll go into the calendar, open the tour plan, and you probably might even have missed this, but I can add now iframe for the calendar. It's in the constraints. I can choose the file here, but I forgot to put my files into offline HTML folder first, right? No, that's not a problem anymore. I can just hit manage and start adding my files in there. So I'll just go in here, open HTML section, use calendar command, JavaScript Bridge, and show toast, and just drag the files in there. Save, close, and now I can just browse my calendar command file from there. And I'm finished with the setup of the tour plan. This will allow me to handle the long press command. I want to do one more thing. I want to show the passive toast or passive notification. For the sake of time, I'll just add an iframe on the home form, call it show toast, and again I'll just browse a file from the offline HTML folder in here. Save, publish, and once it's done, I can just sync my mobile app. Here we are. Okay, let's start with the toast. So I have here the command, and here in the bottom you can see the notification on the Windows 7 application. The notification is in here. You can see the icon, you can see the text and the application which have triggered this notification. So really just a small info that something has happened. Maybe a record has been created in the background, maybe synchronization has finished, whatever you find appropriate to show to your users. When I go into the calendar, click on the week and tap and hold. Let me see, perhaps I will have to do this in the second app, now that I think of it. So here I will have to resync, sorry for that. Okay, let's see. And if I now open here and just tap and hold, you can see I have intercepted this command from JavaScript, and I can see where as a user I have tapped, on which day, which time. I can get the current time, and I can perhaps create a different type of entity or provide it with some additional parameters from JavaScript. So this is the presentation of the demo. What I wanted to say is that these files will be also part of the recording of the webinar, meaning that if you will be watching this from YouTube, you will find these examples below the YouTube window. And if you are watching this as a webinar, you will of course get this via email after the webinar ends. So I'll just continue with my presentation with just a couple of final slides. If your customers are not using version 11.3, feel free to download it and try it, because as you can see, the features available there are really interesting and even can save a lot of time in terms of the synchronization dashboard. And if you haven't, been using Woodford HTML, start using it, because this is now the main tool to use for your projects. And this is it from my side. So now it's time for your questions. If you haven't yet written your question into the GoToWebinar window, now this is the time, because what I will do, I'll start answering the questions right now. I can see we have a few, so let me read through some of the questions which are written there. The first question is about report editor. If there would be buttons undo and redo. This is a good idea, so I think we should add this on the list of our features that could be added and use undo and redo in the report editor. Next question, let me see what we have, is the default end date of the sync dashboard, which is at midnight of the current day, and which might be filtering some of the synchronization logs out. Again, a good comment. I'll pass this to our development team. I think there have been some improvements in this regard as well when it comes to the March release. Another question about sync dashboard. If you have noticed that we are showing the milliseconds as the default option for the times. So whatever it's synchronization times you see, there are milliseconds. I understand that sometimes you want to see perhaps minutes or so we can discuss this with the development team, but sometimes or many times the incremental synchronizations are really short. So they would be, when it comes to minutes, you would see 0 or 0.001 or something like that. So depends on the use case, but again, a feature request that we'll look into. Another question is about the fonts, and if you can change the fonts in the menu, which I think is referring to the home screen. Let me just quickly go back into the slides, because I think I know what you mean there, and that's this one, I think, right? So let's go here, and here you might notice that there is the font being used on the home form as well. If you want to change this one, you have to change the primary style, which is being used throughout the whole application, all the views, or you can also define the home forms view, and if you do that and change the style on the cells in that view, you can also then, of course, specifically target that view and change the font in there. We have a couple of questions which are not related directly to the webinar content, so I skip them for now and get back to them later. So I'll just continue with one question, which is about the Azure Blob Storage for attachments. So yes, there exists a plugin for Dynamic CRM, which allows you to utilize Azure Blob Storage instead of the nodes or attachments. If last time that I checked, this plugin was still in the beta version or preview version, so I don't know about the availability right now, but the thing is that we support this plugin. So from the Resco's perspective, if you start using this Azure Blob Store plugin for storing your attachments, it will work with Resco. A question about cloud documents and if they could be deleted once they are uploaded to the server. Basically, you can do this using synchronization filters. every record which is not in compliance with the synchronization filter will be deleted, but at first this record will be uploaded to the server and only afterwards deleted. So if this is your use case, then yes, you can do something with the documents filtering. Another question about cloud documents is if you could download the files. If you can not download the files but still use the integration. And I think you've seen me doing that in the demo. Actually, that's the key. You will just set the maximum attachment size, or you can use the more precise version of files filtering. What I mean is that we have this section in Woodford now, which is called, if I go into configuration, we have this blob filter, where I can put some XML setup, and we have a blog post about this, so you can find out what kind of setup you can provide in here. But basically this will filter which documents will be downloaded to your mobile device, and if they are not downloaded, you can download them on demand, or the user can download them on demand. Multi-select on the calendars, if it is possible. So currently, I don't think we have multi-select on the calendar available, and I don't think it's on the roadmap as of this point, but I will discuss this with the developers and let you know. Recommended browser for Woodford HTML. I think that currently Chrome is the browser which has the major share on of the use case. So we are obviously testing most of the functionality on the Chrome, but our approach is really to have all of the browsers supported. So if there is any inconsistency about how Woodford HTML works for you, then just let us know via our support channels and we'll look into that. If the box integration could allow you to select folder to where you want to save items to, one of the items on our roadmap is to provide a more precise mapping, so you will be able to do a little bit more of the selection of these folders. Currently, the folder structure is quite strict, so you select the root folder, and then Resco Mobile CRM will start creating the structure as entity and the record. And currently, there is no way to change that. Question about tap and hold, but on the maps, if that can be intercepted via JavaScript. At this moment, we don't provide this capability, but we are on the roadmap. Also, we have iframes for maps, so sometimes in the future that will be available. If enabling synchronization dashboards, if that uses storage of dynamic CRM, in fact, yes, it does. And the reason is that all the synchronization logs are in fact stored as records in dynamic CRM. So there is the Resco Mobile audit entity, which will be filled in. The records will be created with all those logs. So you can see all the logs being added into your server. But if I go here into the settings, I'm sorry, I don't have this. I don't think we have this in the Woodford HTML yet, but there is the section maintenance, which can delete old mobile audit records for you, so you will not have to worry about your about your server-side storage. Okay, I see we have some more questions about topics which are not really related to the point of the webinar. So I'll just end the webinar for now, and if you have more questions, feel free to send those via email, and I will follow up on the discussion with you afterwards. So I thank you for your attention. I hope you've learned some nice new features that we have at Resco, and I hope you will start utilizing as soon as this webinar ends. And I hope to hear you or see your questions soon when we have the March release out, which will be in 2 or 3 months. So thank you for your attention and see you next time.